These poor people are like a crazy woman in love with a no good man. The more they get mistreated, the more they love it. What progress have we made under the Republican Party?
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We're going to be talking to our guest Randy Kelley here in a bit, but I want to lay the groundwork for this conversation really quickly. We're a Union Talk radio show. Both of us are union members. Both of us are workers. We don't make money from this show. We're not professional pundits, right? We go to work. I do like the 9-to-5 thing, and Adam has a little bit, a little bit more hectic of a schedule being a stagehand. But the reason that we have at least a passing interest in the Democratic Party here in the state is not that we are Democratic partisans. It's because it is obvious that the Republicans don't care about us. Just a few examples that are all recent, right? Kay Ivey, in a letter with other Republican governors, is trying to get Joe Biden to rescind his executive order mandating project labor agreements on federal construction projects over $35 million. Now, this sounds like, what project labor agreement, $35 million? This is all like hoity-toity, I don't know what that means. That means project labor agreements increase wages, they make benefits better, they make the jobs safer, and they keep more of the jobs local. She is lobbying for Joe Biden to rescind the order to make those things happen in Alabama on federal construction projects. That's all you need to know about that. The Alabama Attorney General still has not so much as commented on child labor in his state. We have children, 12-year-old children, working in manufacturing facilities with $50,000 OSHA fines for amputation hazards, among other things. And he hasn't even commented about it. The top law enforcement officer in the country, or in the state. When Democrats last year tried to pass a Pregnant Workers Protection Act in the same year that Roe would later be overturned, no less, Republicans killed it. Republicans want to allow pregnant workers to be discriminated against because they're pregnant. And yet, they want them forced to be pregnant. Tommy Tuberville read from a Warrior Met press release when his constituents were in D.C. testifying to how that company is screwing them over. When Alabamians were in D.C. on talking about how Warrior Met and these private equity firms are screwing them over, Tommy Tuberville read from the press release of international private equity firms, not from Alabamians. Not a single Republican, in fact, has supported these striking miners. Instead of supporting workers in their state, Republican politicians and their pundit class want to make us mad at each other. They want us to attack each other. They want to attack immigrants. They want to attack gay folks so that we don't get mad at all their buddies donating to their campaigns, right? So it's obvious to folks paying attention, it should be, that the Republican Party wants to grind working people into powder because they are fully beholden to the bosses. And it would be nice to have a party in the electoral sphere that stood up for working people, that was a partner to working people, to labor. And for now, and that actually had some power to do something for us. And for now, the main opposition party is the Democrats, who I do want to say have done some things for working people in Alabama, and then more federally. They were able to successfully block the anti-protest bill, which would have further hampered our ability to strike in the state. And like I said, Democrats tried to pass a Pregnant Workers Protection Act to protect pregnant folks from discrimination on the job. And one or two of them have even been supportive of the coal miners. And the Tuscaloosa County Party has donated to their strike fund, and the state party, at one point anyway, was sending out fundraising emails for them. Of course, there are some times that they underperform. I saw merchandise of several local Democratic candidates here in Huntsville, and not a single piece of their merchandise had a union bug on it. Who knows if they were even made in the country, right? Could have been made in China. One of these Democrats with non-union merch was bragging in an ad about having been president of the local council of bosses, also known as a chamber of commerce, at a time when she was president of that organization, at a time when those organizations were lobbying the legislature for immunity from liability for putting their employees in egregious risk to COVID in the workplace. A lobbying effort that was successful in Alabama, by the way. And then there are the whole suite of issues from which Democrats are simply absent in the battleground. That they're just not present in any meaningful way. The Democratic Party in Alabama has, through multiple changes in leadership in this state, gone from controlling both chambers of the state legislature to almost total irrelevancy since 2010. A party that cannot field candidates for half the races, much less all of them, could hardly be considered functional. And a party that does well to lose by 20 points, that's doing well. And in a supermajority of districts could hardly be considered competitive. And those are just a couple of the many symptoms of deeper issues with the party in this state.
Yeah, and I want to jump in here and just share a few thoughts, particularly after this election. And I want to start by saying that the working class in Alabama, as elsewhere, is the majority, right? We are the majority numerically. We're also the most diverse class. And, you know, it's worth reflecting as we talk about how the Republicans do not represent us, that we don't have representation in the state of Alabama. Working class people, we don't have representation. We don't have legitimate opposition to the far right. We don't have a viable opposition to right-wing ideology and to the right-wing politicians who dominate this state at the behest of bosses. And, you know, I'm tired of Alabama being the best at everything bad and the worst at everything good, right? I'm tired of Alabama's quality of life ranking at or near the bottom on every single metric. And I know I'm not the only one. Working class people deserve better in the state of Alabama and elsewhere. And for me, I think and I want an interracial working class movement that can actually change the balance of power here in Alabama and elsewhere. That's what I want to see. And frankly, I think it's our best and only hope to respond to the multiple layers of crisis that we're experiencing. We have a societal downward spiral of exploitation, of oppression, and environmental destruction. And if we're to pull ourselves out of it, it's going to take everyday people, white and black, gay and straight, native and immigrant, all pulling together along our common interest and our common ground as working people, as people who don't own anything but our labor that we have to sell to somebody else and hope it's enough to survive on. That's the state of the situation here in Alabama. And we don't have an adequate voice. And so, you know, that's been on my mind this week as I've digested this election and these election results, and as we prepared to talk with Chairman Kelley. And, you know, I'm very appreciative of his time to come on the show and talk with us. And I'm looking forward to hear what he has to say, because I think there must be dialogue between those who are in positions of political leadership and those of us who are out living our lives, hoping for progressive change, trying to make a difference in the community.
So I think that the big questions, and I think you were hitting on them there, for working people in this state are these. Will the Democratic Party in Alabama be able to pull itself out of the slump it is in and be able to once again contest Republicans in a serious way? How does it do that? If they do, will they represent the interests of working people as a contestant in the political arena? Is it worth you, listener, as a working person, devoting any of the time that you've been able to get free from your boss, any of your hard-earned money, to the party, to these candidates? Are the people at the helm capable of turning this apparatus into a real force, and will they have your interests in mind? I think this is only a touchstone in a long debate that working people have been having since Republicans and Democrats have emerged as the two main parties in our system, and it's a debate that's going to be had long after this conversation, right?
We're not going to solve
We're
it
not
all
going to solve
today.
it here, but to help us work through some of these questions today, we do have the man at the helm of the Alabama Democratic Party today. The man who has been at the helm since August, Reverend Randy Kelley of Huntsville. Mr. Kelley, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us this morning. Thank you very much.
But thank you for your invitation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, yeah, I like I said, really do appreciate your time. I'm sure you're busy. We definitely, we're interested.
Just stop on the word business there. I got a wedding today, a funeral today. Supposed to be at a ministers conference today from the social actions chair. So every day is a busy day.
Absolutely.
But I love it.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you taking the time. And so let's talk about you being the person at the helm. How did you get here, and why did the folks on the State Democratic Executive Committee trust you to lead the party during this moment?
Well, I have come up through the ranks to be chair in the Democratic Party. I started off as a member of the Alabama Democratic Conference, became Alabama Democratic Conference county chair, regional chair, state vice chair, became a DNC member, the vice chair of the party for 2 terms, was elected as the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee Black Caucus, as well as to the Associated State Democrats. So I've come all the way up through the rank in the Democratic Party.
So what is your vision for the party? What, did that play into the people that did vote for you on the committee? Was there a specific kind of organizing plan that you presented people with, or was it just by virtue of like having been around for a while, right?
Well, I have been working diligently for a while, particularly in the area of social justice. I have a background as an SCLC president, Southern Christian Leadership Conference president, as well as an NAACP president. In the United Methodist Church, I've served as the convener of religion and race for the entire North Alabama Conference. And we've been very visible, very vocal. Here in this area, I am the political actions chair of the NAACP in Madison County, which is the largest one in the state. I'm the social actions chair of the Greater Huntsville Interdenomination Ministerial Fellowship. That's the largest ministerial fellowship in this area. And I'm on the board of Interfaith Mission Services and a number of other things. I have been extremely active. And I pastored in Birmingham and been a talk show host. I was talk show host in Gaston at Birmingham.
So you can give us some tips after the show.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to.
I need a job on that.
There you go. There you go. Well, and I think that all that is relevant. All these you've been chair of a lot of different organizations and all of this stuff. But the question was, what is your vision for the party and the concrete goals that you have for your term as chair? How are you gonna parlay these positions and these connections that it sounds like you have to make the Democratic Party relevant?
Okay, I think we've got to first of all start off with the problem. As you should know, if you don't know, that Alabama is one of the most racially polarized states of the nation. President Obama ran, he lost by a record margin, but Donald Trump won by a record margin here. And the South has been going Republican since Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. He said, I'm going to sign this act. I feel that I would turn it over to the South, but this is the right thing to do. Then you had a number of whites left based on the Civil Rights Act that was achieved in Birmingham under the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth and many others. And then you had another flight when Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954 was passed in that Supreme Court decision, but school integration came about in the late 1960s, around 1968, based on school integration. That galvanized whites to go from some whites that didn't want to go to school with blacks, the so-called moral majority, which I call it immoral majority. They were galvanized, and you had other whites that was galvanized. And these galvanizing issues came about because of perceived black progress. Now, here in Alabama, one thing is hardly ever shared. We have more black elected officials in this state than any other state in the nation. But that has come about because of activism, civil rights activism. And the gains that we have achieved is based on civil rights activism. And so you said it, your co-host said it succinctly, we got to pull together because we got more in common than we have in differences. And you know, the Republican Party don't give a hill of beans about blacks, nor poor people, nor any diversity as far as that is concerned. And we all didn't come here on the Nina, Hinton, and Santa Maria, but we're all in the same boat now. As he shared, and I was intending to share before he shared, he just stole it out of my brain. We're at the bottom of everything that's good and at the top of everything that's bad. The Republican Party is pro-rich. And of course, they're against women's rights. They're against raising the minimum wage. Most of the folks that's voting for Republicans can't name not one thing that the Republican Party is doing. And even the candidates don't even promise you anything but trickle down economics. They're waiting on economics to trickle down. It's just like Chicken Little waiting on the sky to fall. And so these poor people are like a crazy woman in love with a no good man. The more they get mistreated, the more they love it. What progress have we made under the Republican Party? So we've got to tell the story collectively, those of us who are conscious and those of us who are of a good will. Now, Black people never would have gained into that. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Public Accommodation Act, if it had not been for white folks of goodwill. So we got to appeal to white folks of goodwill and tell them that the things that's at stake. You got folks like Lindsey Graham and other Republicans that's talking about cutting Social Security. A lot of our seniors, mothers and grandmothers live off Social Security. You have a party where you now have Joe Biden, who has created 10 million jobs, the jobs that Trump lost. And in denial of the Republicans, just an incompetent, dumb, racist man in office, and his only appeal was racism. So we've got to really come to our senses here in Alabama if we're going to make progress.
I do think that a lot of that is important, and a lot of that is you know, it.
Let me share this. Let me share this. Now, in 4 months, now I'm not going to do a miracle. I was naked in mid-August, and I inherited this party. They had people before me was making half a dozen of them making over $100,000 a year, and one of them was making $150,000 a year. But now, when I took the helm of the organization, then they didn't have money in it, and also even the website. Even the password was not even passed down in the website. So we got to rebuild it from the bottom. And it's really as an all-time low now. But on the other hand, I think it's still a good time because I plan on working, organizing and mobilizing young people, coalitions, organizations. Here at this church I pastor, we have one of the largest Juneteenth. We have the largest Juneteenth in the state and probably one of the largest ones in the country. And I put that together in 2 years. We have 50 organizations and 8 churches join us every year. And we had a Juneteenth in the pandemic before it was a holiday. Prior to here, I had the largest one in the state. We had Chinese, Japanese, Native Americans, Korean, country and Western white people. We pulled them together. If we can do that for a festival, we can do that for the progress of this state here on these grounds here. This year we had an international delegation of people from Global Times, from Brazil, Peru, Bolivia, Guatemala, Cuba. We had the U.S. Huntsville Missile Defense Agency, and who's who in Huntsville kicked off by the mayor. Now, if we can mobilize a coalition like this, it's going to take organizing and mobilizing and energizing our base.
I was going to jump in here, Jacob. And I'm glad you mentioned that in terms of what you inherited, because that was actually the next question we had. Because I think in fairness, we have to state that you became the chair in August, and we're talking about issues that have festered for many years, for the entire adult lifetime of me and Jacob here. And so regardless of what people think about your short term in office so far, or your election, it can't all be put on you or any one administration, because we have to acknowledge that the Democratic Party in Alabama has not been viable in multiple election cycles under multiple administrations. So I do appreciate that you kind of shared a little bit. You've been candid about the state of the party that you inherited. And so, I want to switch gears kind of on that note, though. There are obviously some really deep divisions within the Democratic Party activist base. Not that there's a lot of those in the state of Alabama, but there are Democratic Party activists, and there's division there. And in fact, it seems like about the only time Democrats have been making headlines lately is when there's that kind of drama, as you put it elsewhere. And I think that's fair to call it that. There's been media coverage of your dispute with the vice chair. We don't want to get into all that because we're focused on the bigger picture here. But I know you spoke with Josh Moon and David Person recently about that issue at length. And so, if folks want to hear more about that, they can tune into that. But we wanted to zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture of building bridges, building coalitions, as you mentioned. What are your plans and thoughts moving forward to make use of the people who already are with you in some form or fashion? They are involved in Democratic Party activism in some way, whether it's, aligned with ADC or aligned with other organizations. But how do you plan to make use of the people who are already with you and build bridges to grow that coalition and start to heal the divides within the party?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's just one individual divide, and we need to just talk about that. The issue of that was something that my vice chair sent to the media, but actually my vice chair has had some very bizarre behavior the entire time she's been elected, but you've never heard of a problem like that in the Democratic Party before. And I called for a convention. She was against that. And the convention was to heal and build. That's what the theme was. But she was against that specific convention. And in that convention, the heal and build, I saw her get into a confrontation with 3 different people. And 2 were Black and 1 was white. So, and then I was sending correspondence out to our SDC members like any chair would do. And she would set up follow-up correspondence after I sent my correspondence out. And then I saw one article where she said she was the co-chair of the party. Well, we don't have co-chairs of the party. And then she had sent out a correspondence was saying that she's calling a press conference. Well, that's a violation of protocol. I just shared how I've been the vice chair of all kinds of things and chair, even president of my student body in seminary. But the official voice of the party is for the chair. So I sent that out to our SDC members, and she sent that to the media. And that was to create drama. And this white racist Republican newspaper is not going to give the Democratic Party any positive media. That's why it's important, always been important for having Black radio. black newspapers because they told our story. If you're familiar with the history of it, they tried to outlaw black papers because they painted organizations with blacks in a positive light. So we got to create our own media. And we got to tell our own story because the devil still, if we don't tell our story, the devil will always steal our story and rob us of our glory.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that people having their own media is important as opposed
Obviously, I mean,
to,
that's
you know,
that's what we're
that's
doing
what we're trying to do here.
and we're proud to be on WZZA, which is a historic black station up in Northwest Alabama. I'm sure you're familiar with.
But well, you know, Adam, really quick though, I wanted to dig into that a bit because and we're live on YouTube as well as the radio, and so on YouTube, you know, people can chat in, and we have some people that are on the committee that are watching, and they're chatting and telling us some thoughts, and you know, some of them are saying that from one member, she says, I say as a committee member, I've received no emails from Chair Kelley, and I have asked directly to be added. The chair's never sent any emails to SDEC members because only Tabitha has bothered to try to put together a full list. New SDEC members haven't received anything. Why is that? Why is he saying that he does have a full list and that he is? And so, you know, it seems like there's at least a contention saying that you know, that Tabitha is the one that has actually been able to talk to them, and that's actually tried to talk to them. And you know, as far as calling a press conference and talking to the media, I mean, do you not think that talking to the media is as you know, somebody that the state committee elected to be vice chair, do you not think that talking to the media is something that a vice chair can do?
She can call a press conference on her own, but not for the party. Yeah, I'm the chairman of the party.
Mm-hmm.
And it's anything with two heads is a freak. So it's going to be one chair of the party as long as I'm running the party. But I'm glad the caller called in because we've tried to get the information of who was on the committee because the court reporter never sent us this information. We have not received that information yet. And now Miss Eichner may know, but she should have been gave us all of the information of the people that was on there. And that's why some people didn't get any correspondence because we didn't even know they were on the committee. And that was one reason we had even a get acquainted event and pull a convention together so we could find out who was on there. But the court reporter has not given us that information as up to this date. And I would have to have ESP to know, extrasensory perception, to know who in the ham sandwich was on the committee. There was no way for me to know.
Sure. But I think
we thought we had everybody, but right. yeah, it's not my fault. Yeah, we've tried persistently, so it wasn't a smooth transition. Mm-hmm. Now, if I had been chair, I would have had everything in place. I would have had a plan for the candidates and all this kind of stuff. But I inherited no plans, no funds, or anything like that. As I just shared, it's at an all-time low. And the reason why I can say it's an all-time low because I've been on the committee.
Sure, and I mean, you know, I don't doubt that there are, you know, I didn't realize that they hadn't given you the password to the website, for example. I think that's pretty, that's not great. But, you know, you mentioned in your interview that you hadn't even talked to the vice chair since the you know, public kerfuffle, and then the you know, the person here in the chat is saying that she's given you her email directly and she still hasn't, and requested to be added and still hasn't been added. But it sounds like you're going to be working to make an effort to add the people that are, you know, calling the office and sending emails and requesting to be added. Is that what we're understanding?
Yeah. Well, personally, I don't have the email. She hadn't sent it to me. Mm-hmm. I don't know who she sent it to, but I don't have it. But we put everybody on there whose name that we had, and we even have made repeated appeals for that. And we'd be happy to put a name on there. Yeah.
Well, I think what we see here is obviously there's some communication issues inside the party, and I think that it would be a mistake to say that the division is solely down to one individual, because um, even if that one individual is certainly part of this, there are people who are aligned with Miss Eisner. There are people who are kind of on, taking sides, so to speak, and so and that's kind of what were hoping to look at
Is to
we've
see,
got
yeah, like
sides.
how
Let's
are
put these
right,
sides
and how
together.
how are we gonna how are you gonna, because we're not we're not
And
democratic
the
actors,
second
right?
part,
But how are y'all gonna be able
we
to?
have communicated. We
Right.
have communicated. That's not true that we have not communicated. We've communicated.
Oh,
Since then.
since okay, well, well, that may have happened. So I just listened to the podcast of you and
Right.
Josh Moon this morning, and,
Yeah,
and
that
on
was
that
at
pod,
that time. That was at that time.
gotcha. Okay,
Uh-huh.
well,
Uh-huh.
and so what is the plan to kind of bring those factions together?
Well, actually, I think the main thing that brings people together is working around a common issue. Uh, Issues bring people together. As a long-time church pastor, that builds relationships, working together for common causes. And yes, we've got different cultures and different backgrounds, but it's a matter of synthesizing those things and then being able to disagree and not being disagreeable.
Hmm. I think that that's something that we certainly try to take into the union hall. Try to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. I think that's
Absolutely.
good advice. So on to the next question that we had was about the fielding of candidates. And obviously, right, you've been chair since August, and that was long past the deadline to get on the ballot. So the lack of candidates on this election is certainly not on you. But this has been an issue since, I mean, even in 2018, we had there were more Democrats on the ballot than I think 2014. But this year, Libertarians actually fielded more candidates in Alabama than Democrats. And they did that despite only knowing they'd have ballot access a month before the deadline.
And just to give a practical example on it, I counted up on my ballot in Athens, Alabama. I had 26 offices to choose from. Democrats had 7 candidates. Libertarians had 12. And 10 Republicans were unopposed. So there were more unopposed Republicans on my ballot than Democrat options.
So what is your plan to increase candidate recruitment so that folks at least have an option on election day?
That's it. Aggressively seek out candidates. Now, I'm a former city council person. First time I ran, I would have been shocked if I had won, because I was just a radical out there addressing issues, trying to improve my community. And I didn't have the money to run a campaign. I didn't really have the message, and I didn't have the machinery. Those are the basics. And candidates can't win an election when you don't really have the basics. Now, if you got a message and you're able to organize, you can build a machine. And then you're looking at a state. I was talking to President Biden, and at the end of our conversation, he asked me, how was it going in Alabama? And I said, Mr. President, you know this is a deep red state. And he said, well, you wrong. He said, it's a crimson state. It's past red. Kay Ivey, in the first report, had spent $10 million and had $250,000 almost left. And there's no telling how much she didn't have on this last round. And political monies normally come from big business, because that's good for business. They want these politicians to be favorable to their business dealings and what have you. And a lot of times it's just like going to the horse race. You're not going to go out and bet on a horse that's going to be losing. So we've got to recruit candidates, and we got to groom candidates, and we got to provide candidate training. But now there's candidate training out there that's offered by the Democratic National Committee. You had the Best Practice Institute, you had the National Democratic Training Committee. But the folks are not familiar with that. We're going to make sure that the people are familiar with that kind of training, because there's some people want to run, but they don't know how to campaign. Now, the next time I ran, I had name recognition. People knew me. I even got a talk show, daily talk show at 12 noon on WMGJ radio called Tell It Like It Is, where I kept the city stirred up every day. And then I was pastoring a church, and basically the church that I pastored was my campaign committee. We had children and senior citizens and what have you, and we built an organization without no endorsements from the newspaper or so-called big folks. We ran a grassroots campaign, but that's very rare in itself. So you need to, first of all, spend some time in planning a campaign. I think some folks spent less time in planning the campaign than they would a trip to go to New York City or somewhere.
I
You're
think
just not going to beat people there in a deep red state. Well, we don't own, it's not in any statewide position at all. And then you're gonna pop up and then unseat these incumbents. It's hard to beat an incumbent. So anyway, we got to work at it. We got to build our base, organize, strategize, mobilize, and train. And also we got to reach a lot of these young people. I think one of our failures is that our young people, even in the African American community, they're unaware of the struggle. And many of them don't know the importance of politics. They don't know that being engaged in civic affairs increases the quality of life indicators, that things are better in communities where people are active in civic participation. So we've got to work and educate them on the importance of voting and how using our vote as a weapon is a way of making a more just and a more loving world.
I think those are two good answers, I think, and I'm going to ask a follow-up to both of them. And the first is the bit to candidate recruitment, and you said aggressively seeking out candidates and training them and planning and thinking of getting people, that are rooted in their community. And I think that is, I would agree with that. And so the follow-up to that is because the candidate recruitment has been an issue, since 2010. And that's been under both kind of administrations of the Democratic Party in Alabama, under the Worley administration and then under the England administration. And so and both administrations, I think, objectively failed to recruit candidates. I think, that's just a fact of the matter. And it's not an indictment of their character, or, maybe it's, or anything like that. It's just an objective fact that they failed to recruit candidates. And so what are you taking from their failures, from the failures of the party in those two instances? And how are you going to rectify those mistakes? And then the second one that you said was the importance of bringing people into the party, bringing youth folks into the party, getting people civically engaged. I think that's very important. And the follow-up to that is, I think that at one point, I believe there was talk of amending the bylaws to remove the additional caucuses within the Alabama Democratic Party, like the Youth Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, the LGBTQ Caucus, etc. Is that still the case? And if it is still the case, is that a message that people in these groups are going to see and think that this is a party that wants them to be involved? And so just to recap, the questions are, the follow-up is what are your lessons learned from the failures of candidate recruitment from the past two administrations? And then the question about amending the bylaws to remove the additional caucuses.
Well, I'm going to go down to the University of Alabama and take some classes under Nick Saban. He does a good job.
He does a good job. Yeah.
Recruiting football players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, it's complex, and we're going to lay out a comprehensive formula, study the polls and what went wrong, and also continue to build and mobilize. And one of the challenges, we've been trying to raise money. Of course, you can't operate a party without money. So and we really don't have but just a skeleton crew as far as the staff is concerned. So we're in the process of restaffing, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And some things I'm not going to share publicly because I'm a veteran, a former soldier who trained combat soldiers, and you never tell your enemy what you're going to do. And as far as the bylaws is concerned, it's that was not my call. There was some people within the body of the party is concerned. But whatever takes place, I'm sure that it's going to be fair to all.
So you don't have a position about whether or not you should remove those additional minority caucuses?
Those caucuses have never been removed, and they won't be removed. But the battle of it has been somewhat a power struggle, and I don't know how it's going to play out. And I'm the chair. I'm neutral. I don't take one side or the other. In fact, their vote will make the determination. How they voted down or voted up. And it's not anything that I have introduced. And the bylaw that they have was presented before I came there. This is bylaws from the last administration.
But you don't have an opinion about what would be fair regarding the caucuses.
Well, it would be based on numbers. It would be based on the voting percentages in the electorate. But the bylaws were skewed, just for the public information, to reduce the vote of blacks in the party. That's why it was a power struggle. Blacks in Alabama negotiated our voting representation based on our voting participation due to the history of racism in Alabama with the Federal Justice Department. And if you check that, you will find that is true. But they had reduced the number of blacks on that committee to keep blacks from coming into a power on that specific committee. And of course, a professional said that we're 71% of the party, voters of the party. So it's a matter of numbers. It's a power struggle. And you can't hardly find a black person that's not voting Democrat. You wouldn't have a Democratic Party if it wasn't for black folks.
Right. Certainly. One common criticism of the party from some of its own voters has been a lack of presence since August, since you took over. Absence from the conversation in the media, on social media, or in people's email inboxes. I think that there are a lot of criticisms that I would have of the last administration. I think having 15 people full-time on payroll for years, I don't think that we saw, I frankly, I don't think that we saw the benefits of that. The people of Alabama, working people of Alabama, I don't think that we saw the benefits of having 15 full-time staffers for the Democratic Party. But one thing that they did was they had an active social media presence. They sent emails fairly regularly. And since taking office, that has come to a screeching halt. I don't believe that the party has posted anything on social media since then. I don't think there's been any press releases or anything like that, any press conferences. Why is that? Do you think that that's good? Do you think, are you like, is that a purposeful step to take a step back from the public eye while you regroup? Or, do you not think that Democrats should be out there right now? Or, just what is your response to the criticism of the party being absent?
I think the social media issue is relevant, and I'm all for that. But they had staff people for that. And I just got through telling you we have a skeleton crew right now as far as staff is concerned. And we don't even have an executive director. So we're in the process of trying to hire some people, but they're not going to work for peanuts. And if you give them peanuts, you're not going to get anything but monkeys. So that takes time to hire a good staff, because it's easier to hire than it is to hire somebody and fire 'em.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking our time. Like I say, in the short period of time I have, I couldn't have done what they expect. And the expectation for me, and I don't mind criticism. I love criticism because being in leadership for a long time, you get immune to criticism. But I love criticism and I love feedback. And everybody that has called me that I know of, I have responded to them.
And I think that's a good attitude to have to criticism. There have been some people that have volunteered to run the accounts on a volunteer basis. I think that Eisner is one of the people that did. I think that there's been other people on the executive committee that have been willing to run it on a volunteer basis. And is your opinion that the social media accounts should be run by full-time staff as opposed to volunteers?
Well, we will decide who's the best person to run that. And I am not comfortable with Eisner running that. She got a position as vice chair. And because I've seen some of the stuff that she sent. And let me share another thing about Ms. Eisner is she ran for chair in the last administration. She lost chair, and from my understanding, she fell out on the floor and started screaming. And I'm not saying that just to say that. This is what they tell me. So I'm really concerned about who operates the social media, because you're sending messages out from the party, and we're trying to put the party in the best light and the best image.
I think that's certainly important to that's a talk that I've had with people about union Twitter accounts, actually, about social media discipline. that I think that's important.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let one of the toddlers of my church drive me to Washington D.C., fly me to Washington D.C. in an airplane. And even though I love that ham sandwich out of children. So we want the right person in social media. We want the right person as the executive director of the party.
So, we talked about candidate recruitment. There were candidates that in some of the races. Do you feel like those candidates across the state got the support and the guidance that they needed from the state party before you were elected and then after you were elected? I don't know if you can comment about the support that they received before, but you can certainly comment to the extent that they received support after. Do you feel like they got the guidance and the support that they needed from the state party to be able to run successful campaigns?
Well, they got the guidance, those that asked me, the best guidance that I could give them. And also, I personally hosted forums so that the public could be informed about what they stood for, make sure they was visible. And a lot of them came to my church, even libertarians came here. And we provided platforms for them. And so I don't know of anything else that we could have done for them. Now, as far as finances is concerned, in the Democratic Party, you have two funds. You have a federal fund and a non-federal fund. The federal fund basically is used for salaries, but non-federal is flexible. And what we did with the non-federal, some of that is we help with ballots, guide ballots. And the reason for that, the Alabama Democratic Conference is in all 67 of Alabama counties. And folks, a lot of them will not vote because they've been conditioned and they've trusted in the leaders in those specific areas to vote by that ballot. And we encouraged all of them to vote straight Democrat. And if the truth is known, that many of them got as many votes as they did because they voted straight Democrat.
I think that, you spoke about, some of your plans to build a working class majority, hitting some of these issues where Republicans are clearly out of step with the average working Alabamian, wanting to cut Social Security, wanting to cut Medicaid, wanting to cut taxes for the rich while continuing, grocery taxes on the poor. I think that these are all, I don't think that you mentioned that last one, but I feel comfortable, I think that it's a safe assumption that you hold the position that the grocery tax is wrong as well. But, shifting to, as a union radio show, shifting to the Democrat Party's orientation to labor.
And let me interject this before you get off labor. I'm a former union representative. I work for Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company.
Okay.
And also I work now with a group that's organizing unions. And we have periodic Zoom calls. So I'm very much pro-union.
Well, that is,
That's great to hear.
That's good to hear. And so are we going to see, under Randy Kelley's Democratic Party, are we going to see, a recommitment to organized labor with a real intention to support unions, those who are organizing unions and stuff like that? We've seen several big labor actions going on in the state right now. Coal miners are on strike. Paper mill workers are locked out. Starbucks and Amazon workers are organizing unions. Longshore workers got near a strike down in Mobile. And all of that is actually... That has all been since you've been chair, right? So we've got a lot of stuff happening right now. So what have you and the party been doing to support these workers and since you've become chair, and what is your plan to support these workers moving forward?
Oh, well, I had no connection with them. None of them had contacted me about it. I intend at least of all develop a relationship with them. We have Darrell Turner's son, who was an official in the labor union. He's over that for the Democratic Party. And I think he's going to play a great role in working with those unions. But any way that I can help them, I'm certainly going to do that. In fact, I have worked to try to organize unions in hospitals and plants and everywhere else. Yeah, in fact, if it wasn't for the union, I wouldn't be getting a retirement check from a Goodyear Tire Rubber Company, and we wouldn't be getting the wages that we have, and the benefits, the health benefits, and all these things. So yeah, I'm 100% behind the union, but a lot of times, it's a matter of working together, networking, and of course, I know you do understand we have a lot of things that we're challenged with, particularly as the chair, many things to do. And but if I can assist in any way in anything, I certainly will. Right now, we're working with educators in the school. I had a meeting here at this church with some people from the Desegregation Advisory Committee. So we're going to be working with the educators and building bridges there. And as I was sharing, I'm not going to be able to do it. Didn't think I was going to do anything miraculous within the short period of time that I was in there. And even in that window of time, it was 14 days before I was, over 14 days before I was even able to get in the office. Because we had a employee that had COVID. So yeah, my window of time has not been a long time to deal with. And then trying to put together a convention and multiple other things and meetings. But then too, a lot of things that I'm doing now, I wouldn't have to do if we, have the staff in place.
So we're going to be wrapping up here, and so I just want to alert folks. I've tried to, folks that are listening in the YouTube chat, I've tried to incorporate most of your questions into our conversation. But if there's anything that you feel that really hasn't been asked, then now's the time to put a question in the chat for Reverend Kelley. And so as some of the last couple of questions. 60 some odd % of Alabamians didn't vote last week. What is your message to those folks?
Well, that's a hard problem. I don't know why they're not voting. I guess they're not really seeing a return for the vote. I think we got to work both sides of the street. Not only are we going to have to work to build our party, but even those whom we have elected, we need to keep them accountable for our community. And a lot of times people elect people and they don't see them again to 4 more years when they come and give them a chicken dinner and something to vote for them and what have you. But in the meantime, we got to have some community forums and bring these people in and make them accountable. When I was elected official, I had district meetings where I would come in the district and keep people informed. And here I've seen that noticeably absent, particularly in North Alabama. And that's something that we got to get back to. We got to have some accountability.
And if folks do want to get involved, what can they do? How should they do it? What kind of volunteer needs does the party have? Does the party facilitate trainings online, in person, stuff like that? If there are people that are out there and that are listening that do want to lend time and money to the party, where do they need to go?
Well, they could call me or contact the secretary of the party, and I could give my number. You have my number, or either call the office, and my secretary will give that information to us.
Okay, we got a couple more questions in the chat. And how does Chair Kelley intend to support the youth? As he said, it's important for recruitment. Will he accept our email list of youth members and communicate with us? This is presumably from somebody involved in the youth caucus.
I would love to. I'm very passionate about working with young people and any way I can help them. And then also, I'm concerned about not followers, but leaders, making leaders, empowering them. And you said something that I share quite a bit, but in a different way. I believe in having a dialogue rather than a monologue. I want to hear what they have to say. And my job is to empower them and make them successful and make them visible. That's what I see my role is empowering others. I think good leaders make other leaders, and I try my best to do that.
If they don't have access to the party website /socials, are they setting up parallel structures like a new website, new social media, or is there still effort to get those passwords or something?
It's good efforts to get the password. We got some folks working on it, but I have called the associate regional chair. I thought he was going to come up with it, but he was unable to do it. We still got some people working on it, but that's a DNC website. That's not just an ordinary, everyday Rudy Poop website.
Gotcha.
If it was, we would have been changed it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Adam, do you have any other questions for the chairman?
I just wanted to ask if you had any parting words as we close this conversation.
My parting words is I thank you for inviting me, and both of you have good radio personalities, and I have enjoyed your questions, and I basically wish we had more interaction from the listeners, because I kind of feed on that feedback. I'm energized by it. So, but you can invite me anytime. I'll be happy to come on and deal with whatever topic you want me to deal with.
We'll hold you to that now. We'll hold you to it.
I have your number, so I'll give you a call if we want to bring you on. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a vacancy for a talk show host there. Just put me on the waiting list.
All right. When Jacob kicks me off the air, we'll call you up.
I don't have any education, no experience, a good reputation, but I want to be treated fairly like everybody else.
All right.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for your time.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
So,
you just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.